I
We are
wasn't
live.
familiar with the StreamYard, but well, the last 2 weeks with Lisa, I had to.
Mhm.
So
It's pretty simple, I would say,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's really nice because it simplifies the streaming of content and so on.
yeah.
Because ultimately you just want to do your presentation. You don't want to be messing around and trying to
Hmm.
solve complex streamcasts and these kind of things.
Hmm.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to one more session of the Cloud Launcher Run sessions. Today we don't have Lisa with us. She can't attend and moderate this session, but I'm here to try to help you as much as possible, and of course help Javier. I'm sure that you know already Javier. It's the third session of Javier. How are you doing, Javier?
I'm doing good, Hugo. How are you?
All good, all good. So I would say that this is the last session, right, on your
Hmm.
series related to SQL Server on Azure. And as you may know, of course, we will do a quick break on the Lunch and Learn sessions because we have our Cloud Lunch and Learn Marathon event coming up. So we will stop a bit for the Lunch and Learn sessions in order to dedicate our energies into the event and ensure the best for all of you. Before we kick off with the session, I would like to definitely share with you, in case you did not register yet to the Cloud Lunch and Run Marathon, I would suggest you can access our website. It's in the footer. And essentially, the marathon, if you are not aware of the events, is an online global conference that we are going, tech conference that we are going to deliver. And the idea will be to do a marathon of cloud content for 24 hours and enable you to, during the day, to attend the event on your own time without impacting so much your daily routines. We will have more than 170 sessions related to the clouds for different profiles and backgrounds, not only for devs, but we have also non-tech people joining us to attend sessions related to Office 365, Dynamics 365, Dynamics CRM, and also Power Platform and all the related topics on the Microsoft ecosystem. So if you did not have a chance to register, take this opportunity because definitely you will be attending a great event and you will be joining us to enjoy this full day of cloud contents. And one important thing, not only about learning, but also if you register to the events, you will have, of course, opportunity to win prizes, including Microsoft Swag Kits and C# Corner Swag Kits, and also an opportunity to win a voucher and get certified for free on Microsoft technologies, including Azure. So given that, I think we should be good to kick off, Javier.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm gonna
Well,
share. Well, maybe before let me just add your screen. And
mhm.
before actually, I'm just sorry because it has been a long time since I moderated the last session. But before we actually jump into the session, I would just kindly ask you to register to this session. So you can register by using the link, or I'm just going to share as well in the footer, and I'm going to drop the link shortly in the chat for you. But by registering to this session, you basically will be able to access relevant materials provided related to this session provided by Microsoft. So you can use it, scan the QR code, or you can use the link in the window, and I'm gonna drop the link for you in the chat. Let's just give it a minute, and in the meantime, Javier, tell me, do you, outside of the session, of course, I'm just curious, do you work on your daily basis with SQL Server on Azure and all these services that you have been presenting to the people?
I will say that for the last 25 years, I've been working with SQL Server. So the answer
Yeah.
is a capital yes.
Yes. Yeah, because see, these sessions are definitely really important. As you know, anytime you need to move applications to the cloud, to Azure, a lot of times those applications are backed by database, and sometimes the clients are using SQL Server, and it always comes the question, which service should I use? What is the best for in my scenario? That's why I believe it's really important for people to learn about it, so then they can pick the best service that fits their requirements and needs. So
Yeah,
given
with
that,
this three-part series, three sessions that we been covering, the first one was more like overall description of the Azure Data Platform, and not only SQL but also non-SQL, Azure Data Factory, Big Data, Cognitive Services, Synapse, and just a brief description of each of the components in the Azure Data Platform. Then last week we cover the whole Azure SQL family, going through SQL Server on a virtual machine, Azure SQL Database, and also Managed Instance. And today we will definitely focus on Managed Instance in detail. Right? That is why I like to call this session the evolution of SQL Server as a service.
nice. And yeah, so for the people attending us today, if you did not attend the previous sessions delivered by Javier, please be informed, be aware that those sessions are available on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, so you can always review to catch up on this series. So this is the third session that Javier is delivering, and it's always good if you have a look to the previous session so you can understand the flow of this series. So given that, are we ready to start, Javier?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So the floor is all yours. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Hugo. All right, thank you, everybody. Good day, wherever you are watching us today. So, yeah, this session is a continuation of the ones that we already start previous weeks. This is focused especially on Azure SQL Managed Instance. As I was saying, to me, is the evolution of SQL Server as a service. And the idea is just to learn a little bit more about Managed Instance, MI, and seeing which cases we can use it, how we can use it, and how to approach a migration process from our on-prem SQL servers to a managed instance. One more time, a little bit about myself. My name is Javier Villegas, working at Mediterranean Shipping Company, heavily involved with SQL Server and Azure SQL. I am Microsoft MVP in the data platform category, as well as Microsoft certified trainer, and also heavily involved with several communities locally here in Argentina. I am part of the SQL Argentina community, where we have our meetup, our monthly sessions and meetings. And also, I am part of another initiative called Azure NL Bar, a place in where we met with different friends, professionals, community members, specialists, in where we imagine that we are all in a bar, just sharing a beer or our favorite beverage, just uh, discussing about technology, right? A very relaxed environment just to to talk about professional experiences and those kind of things. Really, really nice. Actually, tomorrow we have a session over there, so you are all free to join um, our episode tomorrow. You're going to be more than welcome. This one is going to be in Spanish, but for the one who speaks Spanish, definitely is a good place to be. On the left side of the panel, my contact information, email address, Twitter, and LinkedIn for you to reach me to, if you have any questions about this presentation, or if you want to follow up in something in particular, just reach me, and I'm gonna be glad to connect with you and discuss. Okay, so a little bit about the agenda. We're going to do an introduction. We will cover a difference between infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, something that we've been discussing. We're going to be mentioning one more time Azure SQL Database, and then heavily involved and focusing on managed instance, in where then we're going to discuss about these migration strategies that we can have in order to, again, move our on-premise workload to managed instance. And we're going to be discussing also some updates and roadmap for this service. So again, we have to take this decision to move our databases or our data workload to Azure, right? So definitely we would like to um, stop focusing on some of the things that we've been dealing for the past several years with data centers complexity and definitely a process which is hard to manage, and also with this expensive and complex solutions to maintain on-prem, right? Again, we need to go and deal with the hardware's provider, with the contracts, with the power, with the high availability, everything based from the infrastructure from the ground up, right? So, well, it's time maybe to start thinking on something else in order to modernize all this. Instead of thinking of this point that I just mentioned, let's say that we definitely want to focus into accelerate the growth of our business, right? And with that, definitely the cloud, and in particular Azure, will be a key participant in your solution. So let's see what we can get with all this. So, all right, we let's say that uh, from the business strategy, we just took the decision that we're going to be moving to the cloud. We're going to be moving to Azure. So now what? We have to choose between two different service modeling: infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. This is something that, again, we've been covering before, so let's go and cover it quite quickly, right? If we need to definitely take control of the whole infrastructure, meaning the host itself, the virtual machines, the networking, authentication, um, create the cluster, handle the Active Directory, set up the availability group with always on, etc. And we need to control all this, right? Well, the solution that we need to choose is basically infrastructure as a service, because as we saw last week, we're going to be able to create a virtual machine from a template, from a gallery, in where we're going to have all this combination of different SQL servers and Windows servers or Linux eventually, right? To choose any combination that we need for our SQL Server deployment, right? Focusing again that all the infrastructure behind the SQL Server need to be taken care by us. Instead, if we would like to have a SQL Server endpoint in where the only thing that we need to worry about in how to connect, right? And we won't be considering what is behind this, right? Then we have to choose the option of platform as a service. That will give us the possibility of having our database or our SQL Server workload in some sort of autopilot, because we're gonna have a SQL Server endpoint, right, in where we're gonna be able to get connected and deploy our applications and work with. One more time, very quickly, the three offerings that we have, right? Azure SQL Database. We covered this last week, in where it's targeted for modern applications, in where we can have a self-contained database in where all the database objects live within that unique user database, right? The logins, the tables, views, procedure, everything has to live within that user database. And as we saw from the presentation last week, the different tiers that we have, from serverless till hyperscale, right? We can let's say use this for our modern applications. Then managed instance, in where we mention that is almost 100% compatible with our SQL Server on-prem, right? This is something really important to have in mind, because it's going to be quite simple and quite easy to do the what Microsoft called the lift and shift of our SQL Server on-premise workload, running from a bare metal machine or a virtual machine to a managed instance, right? We're going to be then mention why I said almost 100% compatible and not 100% compatible with SQL Server, right? But yes, the process of migrating our workload is quite simple. Here again, we saw this slide before with the specs of each of the offerings within the Azure SQL. All of them, they have quite important SLA with 3 nines up to 4 nines and 5 nines eventually, if we can set up additional geo replication, so we have our databases replicated into multiple Azure regions, right? So as mentioned also before, definitely the key piece of platform as a service, and as today we are discussing managed instance, are these points, right? Being able to have business continuity and high availability, with automate backups, with an extended long-term retention of those backups, with the possibility of having sheer replication, meaning our database is replicated in multiple Azure regions without us having to do anything, right? Those complex setup for availability group, distribute availability group with the window cluster, etc. This is something that we don't have to worry about that anymore. Of course, as we emphasized before, scale, right? Being able to scale not only platform as a service, also these VMs that we have in Azure is extremely easy and we can do it from the Azure portal, changing the amount of storage, the amount of virtual cores, or even switching from one tier to the other is something that we can do extremely easy. The possibility of having this advanced security, right? Beside all the security that SQL Server has, right? Azure give us an extra layer of security with different solutions that are helping us to attack this area of security. Versionless, also we mentioned this, is something that is not like SQL Server 2016, 2017, or 2019 running as a service. No, this is Azure SQL. And with that, there is not a particular version number, meaning we don't have to worry about doing this in-place upgrade or side-by-side upgrade that we are used to in the on-prem world, right? When we have to move from server A to server B, or when we have to upgrade the SQL Server version from 2008 R2 to 2016 or whatever. We have to configure, the environment, test it, etc. No, this is versionless. So in the future, this is going to be Azure SQL, right? Microsoft in background is, beside providing all these benefits that we mentioned before, right, from the platform as a service offering, high availability, auto patching, automatic backups with long-term retention and security, right? It's also telling us that, yeah, we don't have to worry about the version because ourselves behind the scenes are taking care of that, adding new features, fixes without, having to worry about the service interruption or those kind of things. Building monitoring and building intelligence, again, like Microsoft like to say, this is just SQL, right? So all the features that we have within SQL Server 2016, 17, or 19, they are all there, right? In terms of security, as we mentioned, right? But also in terms of performance, right? For example, all those features that we know, like query store, automatic query tuning, or intelligent query processing, that are all there because, one more time, this is just SQL. So let's start focusing a little bit on what managed instance is, right? Initially, this was um, a solution created by Microsoft in order to extend our SQL Server workload from our data center to the cloud. But the only way that we have to connect to a managed instance was using a private connection, meaning express route or a VPN connectivity. There was no way to access managed instance from internet directly, right? Something that is opposite to Azure SQL database, that we have the possibility to connect from internet. So again, it was an extension of our data center in the cloud, right? We were able to put our databases over there and connect internally with a private, connection. So this was the first approach. Initially, the first approach was also with a minimum of 8 virtual cores, and it was really powerful. So again, it was specific for a exclusive set of workload, right? Really intensive workload in terms of resources, CPU and processing, especially. One more time, without having to worry about the patches, the backups, and the high availability. And with extremely high service level agreement, right? So by default, it was initially like 4 nines. So one more time, these are the things that we don't have to worry about. And without having to worry about all these points, we can really focus on growing our business. So, well, how do we approach a managed instance when we say that it's almost 100% compatible with SQL Server, with different SQL Servers version? Um, Consider, with this explanation also the differences that we saw in the previous session for Azure SQL Database, right? Because again, this is quite different to Azure SQL Database and is really, really similar to SQL Server. So when we start talking about features, right, how do we do a data migration? Well, we have the possibility of doing this lift and shifts, only taking a backup of our SQL Server databases on-prem, right? Putting these backup files into a blob storage or a storage account, and then restore it from managed instance using this storage account, right? So the migration process is as easy as taking a backup and doing a restore, right? Then we're going to see some caveats in this area, but this is extremely easy, right? And we're going to see it in action later on. It does support log shipping as well as transactional replication, right? So if we need to configure our databases, our SQL Server on-prem to do log shipping to a managed instance, or have a publication and be subscribed from managed instance, this is possible with absolutely no problem. In terms of programmability, right, all the T-SQL language that we know, right, and we've been using forever, it's still present in managed instance. So we can work with temporary tables. We can do cross-database queries, right? Remember something important that we mentioned last week, Azure SQL Database, it was everything on a self-contained database, right? So more targeted to new applications or new deployment, but instead, if we need to migrate an existing database, a legacy application which is built by multiple user databases, well, in managed system, we don't have that problem. We can restore all the databases over there, and if we have a store procedure which involves a join between tables in multiple or different user databases, that's not going to be a problem, right? Link server. So we can configure link servers on managed instance, so we can eventually go outside managed instance to retrieve data from another SQL server within a user transaction. Security, as we said before, all the features we know from SQL Server are there. Transparent data encryption, auditing, row-level security, and always encrypted is exactly the same as we know. For us, the DBA, the guy that need to, let's say, monitor and maintain this, we have all the features that we've been working kind of forever. Dynamic management views and functions, right? To know what SQL Server is doing under the hood and give us the, information for us to be able to do our job. Extended events to do troubleshooting. Features like query store, intelligent query processing, right? They are all present in a managed instance. It's important also to mark that in managed instance, we have SQL Serveration with the possibility of also using SQL Database Mail. So we can create different SQLation jobs in order to set up a repetitive task based on a schedule, etc., right? Same as on SQL Server. This is not present, for example, in Azure SQL Database. There are other ways to schedule a repetitive task, but not, using SQL Server Agent. And finally, other features like service broker, change data capture, or as we said, transactional replications are also available in managed instance, right? So as you see, we have almost everything. Something also important to consider is that if you have a SQL Server 2005, right? Hopefully you are not running any production workload on 2005 or 2008, 2008 R2, because as you know, it's not supported anymore. But if you do, you can take a backup of those databases, restore it to a managed instance, and keep the existing compatibility level in order for you to maintain the compatibility of your application with absolutely no problem, right? Um, okay. Mm, how do we define a managed instance? Well, again, we have this concept of tiers, right? So there are two tiers: general purpose, which Microsoft say that most of the business workloads are good with these tiers, but we also have uh, business critical. Business critical give us the possibility of having lower disk latency with fast recovery and additional read-only replicas to offload our read-only workload. Right. This is all based in the B core model, right? So we can choose the amount of virtual cores, and based on the storage and the replica and the technology used in each of the tiers, is how the price is. Business critical is around 2.5 times more expensive than general purpose, right? Because again, basically the main differentiation here is that for general purpose, the storage is remote, while in business critical, the storage is local, again, to accomplish lower disk latencies. Okay, here is some of the specs related to both general purpose and business critical tiers, right? Pay attention especially on the latency and throughput and IOPS, right? See that the average latency in general purpose is between 5 and 10 milliseconds, while in business critical is between 1 and 2 milliseconds. So definitely disks are much better in terms of latency. How do we handle the migration process? Again, Microsoft give us these tools for us to assess our on-premise workload and migrate it to managed instance in this case, right? With database migration assistance or Azure Database Migration Service in order to accomplish this assessment first, to make sure that what we have in our SQL Server on-prem can be successfully moved to managed instance, right? And then eventually to do the migration with Azure Database Migration Service, which, besides what we said earlier, that you can do a backup and restore, where with the Azure Database Migration Service, you can accomplish this programmatically within a service in Azure. So how do we, let's say, approach the migration? Well, let's say we have an on-premise environment with multiple databases, and then we have our managed instance. What do we need to do? Well, first of all, we need to migrate all the system objects from our instance from our local instance to the managed instance, right? Let's say logins, SQL shops, etc. Then we just need to take a backup and storage into an storage account. You know that since SQL Server 2012, you can not only do backups to tape and disk, you can do backups to an URL, right? That means you can do the backups directly into the blob, the storage account. And then, as easy as doing the restore, as we know with the backup command and the restore common. And then you have other managed restore services, which again will be, for example, applying the transaction log backups, etc. If you for certain scenarios, right? But again, it's as simple as taking a backup and restore it. It's important to mention that SQL Server, as we know it, is not only the database engine, right? There are also another components like analysis services, reporting services, and integration services. So analysis services, integration services, and reporting services. Managed instance is the database engine only, right? So we can move the databases, but we cannot move, any of these three components. But Microsoft give us a solution for that, right? So let's say that we need to move analysis services. We have analysis services on-prem and we need to move it to Azure. Well, we always have the possibility of building a virtual machine, install the same version of analysis services, and restore our models, right? If we are using, let's say, um, tabular models in analysis services, we have the possibility of using Azure Analysis Services, which again is the managed version of analysis services. Same as managed instance for the SQL Server engine, Azure Analysis Services is the managed platform for analysis services. So you can just put your tabular models over there and just use it, right? Um, Also for integration services, Microsoft give us another service which is called Azure Data Factory, which allows you to design and implement all your data workflows, right? Um, I don't know, for intended to do ETLs, data transformation, import from different data sources into any other destination, etc. You can do it with Azure Data Factory, right? And for reporting services, well, of course, the normal destination will be Power BI. So why we would like to move to manage instance? Well, first of all, because we have all the features we know from SQL Server, right? It's also with additional network isolation, so we can connect privately, right? So we can extend our network, our private network to it and use it. It has all the benefit of PaaS, right? We mentioned this multiple times. And then, when we do this, when we, let's say, approach the migration, we can consider that, the solution will be quite simple. Let's say it's going to be more like a rehosting or refactoring for some of the things instead of rebuilding the application, like, for example, for Azure SQL Database. So the initial, let's say, diagram in terms of connectivity for managed instance was something like this, right? You were able to connect through VPN or express route from your private network connection from your company, right? And you were able to connect to managed instance. In the slide here, you see SQL instance 1, 2, and 3, but in reality, it's only one, right? Behind the scenes, managed instance have three instances that are doing availability group internally, right? It's not exposing this to you, so you don't see, again, the availability group dashboards, or you don't have to worry about one instance not synchronizing with the other one, because, again, everything is happening under the hood. Something important to mention is that when you put a database into a managed instance, You don't have the possibility of using recovery models like simple or bulk insert. Everything is going to be full recovery model, right? Because again, under the hood, Microsoft is taking care of the high availability, but having the databases as full recovery model is a prerequisite. So we don't have the chance to switch to simple or bulk load, right? Just a comment that is important to mention. It was a private connection, as I said, to the managed instance, but that doesn't mean that you cannot connect your web server, your middle tier, your application server, and then expose that to internet, right? So this was the initial design. Then we will see that there were some changes. Mhm. So with all this PaaS approach, right, there are some features that are not longer valid or are kind of obsolete, or there are another alternative in the PaaS world, right? For example, as we were mentioning, availability groups. This is something that we cannot control in managed instance. All the different options of backup, restore. Again, we can take backups, do restore, but we don't have to worry about taking the backup as a maintenance solution, right? Because again, Microsoft is taking these backups under the hood. Patching, version, all the things in as part of the service. Windows authentication, well, this has to be replaced by Azure Active Directory, right? So those are the main things that are now obsolete. Features that are completely retired are, database mirroring, right? Again, because there is an option to do it automatically, and this is even, discontinued in SQL Server, and extended editor procedure in where we should use CLR. And then this is mainly the main reason why I said this is almost 100% compatible with SQL Server and not 100% compatible, right? Or totally compatible, because there are some features that are not available in managed instance. For example, if in SQL Server you use features like file stream or file table, in, for example, if you use this feature is to, let's say, handle files located in the storage, right? And you can have access to those files through SQL, right? SQL has some sort of, connection to the storage, and you see the files from SQL. Well, that is not possible using managed instance, because again, there is an abstraction between your platform, your host, and the SQL Server service itself, right? So these features are not enabled. If you use this, you may have to modify your application to use a workaround. For example, storage account to store the files, right? Master data services, data quality, stretch databases. Those are the services that are not also available in managed instance. But again, the most important one to me is file stream or file table. How do we recognize a managed instance, right? We will see that when you connect to a managed instance and you do the select add version, you won't see SQL Server 2019, you will see Azure SQL, right? And we're gonna see it in a minute. So the latest addition to the offering is the possibility of having 4 virtual cores on Shen 5 hardware. Initially, it was only 8 core, the minimum, right? Um, you can host, if you use SharePoint, right? Now you can use a managed instance as a backend for SharePoint, also for Dynamic 365, and also for reporting services, right? If you have to store the reporting services, databases, you can do it with managed instance. Initially, you didn't have the possibility of changing the time zone, right? So everything was, when you create the managed instance, it was all UTC. Now you have the possibility of changing the time zone, right? What else? Same for collation, right? Initially, you were not able to do to choose your own collation. It was the default. Well, now you can have this possibility. Bring your own encryption key. You have the possibility of have your key to do the transparent data encryption mechanism. Share distribute failover groups in where you can replicate the whole managed instance to a different location. Long-term retention with up to 35 days. Right. Um, Also, something quite important here is that, as I said, initially the service was designed to have only um, private connectivity from our network or internal network to Azure. Well, after a couple of updates, right, Microsoft also give us the possibility of enabling a public endpoint. So eventually, if we decide to, we can publish our managed instance directly to internet. We're going to see it in action in 1 minute. Finally, as I said, change the time zone, and also being able to use the most common trace flags. Right, this is an addition that was added recently to manage instance. Not all the trace flag, but most of them. And with that, let's see a managed instance in action, and let's try to do a quick migration. So let me jump to my virtual machine first. First of all, I connect to my Azure portal, and I am connected to my managed instance, SQL MI Javier, right? It's just telling you where it is located, the amount of databases you have, also, how you are using the storage, and a few other counters that you can have in here. But let's try to create a managed instance from scratch. So as we said last week, we go to Azure SQL, we hit the new option, right? And then we select managed instance. When we select managed instance, right, we have to specify the subscription, the resource group, again, a logical grouping of our resources in Azure. The instance name, let's call it SQL MI Javier 1, and we'll tell it that it will be located in East US. Then we have to specify the compute and storage. And here is where we have to specify the tier first, if we want to have general purpose or business critical, the amount of virtual cores between 4 and 80, right? Here, all the time, we see a cost summary, right? How much is going to cost you monthly. These numbers are in Argentinian pesos, right? So let's say we're going to choose 8 core and, this amount of gigabyte. Then let's suppose that we have a contract with Microsoft, right? So we already have SQL Server licenses with our Premier contract, for example. So if we have these licenses, we can specify here and use this benefit within the managed instance. This way, we can have a discount also when we create the managed instance. Then how we're going to be storing the backups in a sheer redundant storage, some redundant or locally redundant, right? There are certain companies that are not allowing you to have your backups outside certain regions. So that is why you have all this possibility here, right? So we just choose, the tier, the amount of big cores, and the storage. Note that you don't have the possibility of specifying the memory, right, for the managed instance, right? And this is basically because uh, it will assign you 5 gigabyte of RAM per B core, right? So if you choose 4 B cores, you're gonna have 20 gigs. If you select 8 B cores, you're gonna have 40, etc., etc., etc. So it's mainly attached to the amount of virtual cores, right? So I'm gonna hit apply. We have to specify login and a strong password. So it's going to validate that is correct. So you have to repeat it. Then you specify the subnet, and then here, public endpoint. By default is disabled, so you don't have the possibility of connecting from the internet directly, right? But let's enable it, so this way we will be able to connect. Then you can select the TLS version, which by default is the most recent one, 1.2. Here you can specify the collection, right? All the different collection. You can set here Latin and search, so you will see all the collection that you may have, right? Remember from the SQL Server installation in where you set up the collation, right? Let's leave it as the default. Time zone, in this case, I will choose mine, Buenos Aires, right? If you want to specify a maintenance window and then a failover group, this is if you have another managed instance on a different region will allow you to do this geo replication, but you have to have 2 instances. So let's choose no. Let's do next, in where we can specify tags if we have to. Tags. Come on. Okay. It's not responding, but okay. It was about to finish. The next option when you hit review and create actually will give you, oh, here you can specify the tags, and then review and create is going to tell you the cost. You can review this. You can download the template if you want to just store it, or if you have to deploy multiple managed instances, so you don't need to do it one by one. You can do it with the ARM template, right? And note here at the top something extremely important. Deploying a managed instance is a long-running operation taking up to 6 hours to complete, right? So it's not like you're going to be creating it and it's going to be there immediately, like many of the other services, right? Behind the scene, it has to create these 3 instances and prepare the whole thing. So you're going to hit create, and it will take up to 6 hours. Sorry. Just something to mention. I was part of the private previews, and this 6 hour initially was up to 40 plus hours, so I had to wait more than 1 day in order to have the managed instance created. Now 6 hours is not too much. So if I hit create, it will take up to 6 hours, right? So definitely we won't do it here. But as I showed earlier, we already have one created, right? So this is all we can do from the portal. So now, how can we get connected to a managed instance? Well, if we go to Management Studio, right, you see here that I am specifying the instance name, right? SQL MI Javier, and then I have like a URL here, and then specifying the port 3342. Why is that? So let's review one more time the from the portal. So here is my connection string, right? As you can see, it's not the same that I used before, because the one I used before, it said public, right? And this one is the default port 1433. But again, this is to connect internally within Azure, right? If I want to connect remotely, right, not remotely, from the internet, here is the URL, and here is the port that I have to use in order to get connected. That is why here I specify that URL plus the port. So I get connected, and from here, right, I'm connected. And you see, I also have a SQL Server 2019. See that first of all, the icons are a bit different between one and each other. But when we expand here, we see SQL Server Agent, we see replication, security, user databases. So we have quite similar, I will say the same, that what we have in our SQL Server on-premise, right? So this managed instance has no databases right now, but my SQL Server has. So there are several databases here. So what I'm gonna do is let's migrate one of the databases very quickly. Let's take this one, DBA tools. I will do right click, backup. So I will do my backup, and as a destination, I will choose a URL, right? I will hit add. It's going to ask me to specify the storage account, right? So I will connect with my Azure account, my credentials. I have to authenticate here, right? My subscription. Then I choose the storage account, my container, right? It's going to create a credential. I will hit OK. And here I have the backup file name, right? So with the database plus a timestamp. So I will hit OK here. Something important to consider is when you are migrating from SQL on-prem to managed instance, the backup always has to have this option, checksum, perform checksum before media to write into the media, right? This is something that otherwise it's not going to restore to the managed instance, and you're going to get an error message. So we just take the backup. Backup is complete from on-premise. See here we have multiple tables. I believe there are no procedures, but let's say several tables. I will take one. I will do a select, and you see, table is this is still my SQL Server on-prem. So I let me put this, and I go to my managed instance. So I go to databases, right click, restore database. I have to choose from where, right? Again, I will choose URL. I will go to here, and I still have nothing. So when I hit add, again, it's going to challenge me with my Azure subscription. I'm connecting here. I select the storage account, the container. I create the credential, and then I have the possibility of exploring all the back files that are storage into this container. So the one that we create was DBA tools backup. The most recent one is this one. So I will select it. I will hit OK, OK, and then as our SQL Server, we see the information here, and we're gonna start restoring it, right? Um, Again, doesn't matter which was the recovery model before. When it gets restored to the managed instance, it's gonna tell me that it's in full recovery model. There was an error. Managed instance has reached. Okay, it doesn't have enough space to do it, so I will restore another one. Let's start over. I think I have another backups here, so I will do right click, restore, device, again, the whole thing. Here I may have this. I have to do this again, add, signing, create the credential, hit OK, and let's choose a smaller database maybe. I guess that my test DB is okay. So now I will do the restore. I create quite small for this demo, but it was not big enough to have the disk for this one. So anyway, so it's gonna complete, and while okay, it's just there. We see the database here, so same as SQL Server, we will see tables, etc. So it's same as we know from SQL Server. Another way to connect here is using Azure Data Studio, right? We'll see that there is an extension exclusively for managed instance here. So we can see a deep insight of what's going on within my managed instance, the amount of cores, the memory assigned to the managed instance, information regarding to the TempDB, connections, the counters in terms of storage usage, CPU, IOPS, etc. Right? So we can do everything we need from here. And from Management Studio, we can run most of our, queries. Note here that I'm connected to the managed instance, right? And get here. For example, this is a tool from the community Glenberry, just to do a quick check on your managed instance in terms of how it is configured, etc., etc. So I can run it here, and it's going to tell me not here. I'm presenter presenter on. I have to do 1 second. Present on here. Okay, it's already presented more. So here I have the Microsoft SQL Azure, right? So no version, as we say. And then down here we have other information regarding on how it is configured, etc., etc., etc. All right. So with that, we're gonna switch back to the presentation. Well, here is the QR code to get more information regarding to managed instance directly from the Microsoft documentation, right? You're gonna get all the necessary details for you to start doing a considering managed instance for your destination for your migration. Here again, SQL fundamentals, right? If you want to get a deep insight on the whole Azure SQL family and get a better knowledge to prepare eventually for certification, this is the place to go. Just to remind that SQL Server 2008 R2 is out of extended support, and for 2012 is going to be next year, right? So definitely, and we should start considering moving to a higher version or eventually managed instance, right? And with that, we just complete the presentation, the 3 series. And I'm not sure, Hugo, if there are questions from the audience.
Javier, great presentation. Thank you so much. Amazing.
Thanks.
I hope that the people watching you are more clear about the different SQL Server service available on Azure and how they can, in this case, manage their database on SQL Database Managed Instance. We don't have actually questions. I can actually share a question with to you if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you allow me. So, see, as you know, typically those databases are backing up an application, right? And as you know, on Azure, we have several services available to allow you to host your applications, including app service and so on. So all those services, as you know, have scaling capabilities. So considering an application, imagine an application that has a lot of traffic, and in peaks you start to scale your application, but then you start to realize that your database becomes a bottleneck because managed instance, as you know, use a model of allocated resource. So in those scenarios, what would you do in order to avoid to fix the bottleneck on the database?
Okay, so with managed instance, you have to go to the portal and go and allocate the new, amount of B cores, or change the tier, or add more disks. Like for example, in the demo I was doing, it was not big enough for me to restore the backup I have, etc. That's gonna incur you into a service interruption, because it's gonna, do like a reboot, right, in order to come up with the new set of resources, right? This is managed instance, and also the case for a virtual machine.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
You have to allocate the resources and do it. If instead your application that you're talking about has an Azure SQL database under the hood, right? Not a managed instance, not a virtual machine, but an Azure SQL database, right? You have the concept of elastic pool, in where you can share and assign resources dynamically based on workload or based on a schedule. For example, let's say that your application has more traffic during Thanksgiving, Christmas times, etc., or just during the business hour, and at night is idle, right? You can play with those resource pools in order to dynamically assign resources to your database, to your Azure SQL database, right? But this is again exclusively for Azure SQL database.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. Just to let you know, in the meantime, to everyone, that you still have the link there available in the footer that allows you to register to this session and access relevant materials. I assume that's, do you still have the slide, Javier? Yeah. So you can use the link, or you can also scan the QR code, and you will access relevant materials provided by Microsoft. And if you allow me, I just need two minutes of your time, I hope. Let me just share my screen with you. Okay, so talking about the marathon, right? As I told you, so next week it will come our first edition of the marathon. So essentially an online global conference to deliver cloud content during 24 hours. So during those 24 hours, where doesn't matter where you are, you will be able to have a proper time, find out a proper time to just attend us for a few hours and join us and enjoy live contents. Take chance by registering to the event. You can have a chance to win prizes, including swag kits provided by Microsoft and C# Corner, and also you will have a chance to win a voucher, right? So apart from learning, you can get certified on Azure and Microsoft technologies for free. So don't just take your time and take this opportunity to just register to the events while it's possible. I just want to share with you quickly some details about the sites. As you can see in the beginning of the site, you have the call to action to allow you to register. At the moment, we have more than 600 people registered. So we hope to be able to reach our target of 1,000 people, hopefully. Then if you scroll down, you will have access. One important thing, Microsoft is providing Azure Heroes badges, so you can claim your learner badge in case once you register to the events. And also you can access the marathon sessions, check the schedule, see which sessions it's more interest to you. We have different sessions for multiple language, different tracks with different talking about different technologies, including Azure, including Power Platform, and pretty much a lot of different topics. And the question is essentially the sessions that you are interested. You can essentially add to your calendar. You can choose whatever calendar you are using and add the events to your calendar so you don't miss those sessions. And most importantly, tomorrow, I just want to show you these beautiful people. So tomorrow we will have a meeting to present our regional or local leaders to the community. Okay, so the idea is to present all these beautiful people to you, and so you get to know those people, because they are essentially worldwide leaders that are managing communities worldwide, including in Africa, South America, Asia, Europe. So then you can get to know these people and connect with them. So let me just share with you the link in order to, this is the link that let me just share on the chat as well with you. Sorry, just one sec. So essentially, this is the link for our collaborators group, in this case, the Azure Dublin meetup. And in there, you can register to the session and again, join us tomorrow at the same time. So it will be at 6 p.m. GMT +1 or 5 p.m. UTC. Given that, another important detail is, let me just share with you again, because your opinion matters, I would like to share with you this survey. You can basically fill in this survey and provide feedback to us, because we are always looking to improve the way we deliver sessions and help also understand the speakers to understand how they performed. I'm sure that Javier did really well, based on what I can see from this session. But it's always important to collect your feedback so we can all evolve. And last but not least, of course, in case Javier has any materials to share with you, as you know, we have our GitHub repository that you can access. There are all the relevant materials related to the past sessions. And also, in this case, with these sessions, in case you want to, as an example, try by yourself using Azure SQL Managed Instance, or using any other of the SQL service that Javier shared with you and introduced to you in the previous sessions, you can always access to our GitHub repo and access all the relevant materials there. So given that, I think I think that's pretty much right, Javier.
Yep.
I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Oh, just thank you, Lisa, to having me these 3 weeks in a row, and well, all the people who was watching and following these sessions. I really hope that you get a little bit more of understanding of what Azure SQL is and the component of the data platform in Azure. And
Thank you
again,
so much,
if you
Javier.
have any follow-up or something that you would like to uh, do with me, just contact me. I'm happy to connect.
Thank you so much, Javier. And thank you, everyone, watching us again. And don't forget, tomorrow we have our regional leaders live session for our Cloud Dungeon Run Marathon. So prepare your gear and let's warming up because next week we'll have the marathon. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you so much once again, Javier, and I hope to see you soon again back to the Cloud Dungeon Run sessions.
Hopefully. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Have a good day. Thank you. Bye
You
bye.
too. Bye.